welcome back to the session of English. In this session, we are going to continue with our topic connectors. Now, this is part 6. Well, in our earlier sessions, we have already done many connectors. As I told you, that connectors can be prepositions, can be conjunctions, and can be adverbs. Well, connectors are words that connects two sentences with each other. Now, in this sentence, we are going to discuss some more connectors. We are going to discuss connector nonetheless. So here, let me take this pen. So here we are going to discuss nonetheless, and after that we are going to discuss on the contrary. So we are going to discuss these two connectors in this session. So let's begin the session. Now, first we have nonetheless. Now in this word, you can see, if you just break this word like none the less. Now, basically, this structure does not matter, but let me just explain you. Nonetheless, it means whatever has been said is not that much less or is not that much applicable to the next clause. Now, here, basically, we have two clauses. In the first statement or in the first clause, whatever the information is given does not affect the information given in the second clause. Or you can say whatever is there in the first clause just contradict or is a contrast with the with that of the next clause, or it does not match, it does not affect the next clause. Nonetheless is a conjunction used to introduce a statement that contrasts with what has been said previously. Now, whenever we use nonetheless in the between, whatever the clause after it just precedes, just contrast with the statement which has been said previously. It means we have this information, then we have nonetheless, and then we have this information. So this information does not get effect just because of this. So both of these does not affect each other, or you can say they are contrast in nature with each other. It indicates that despite the conditions or circumstances mentioned in the preceding statement, the following statement remains true or valid. It means, suppose this is the preceding statement, then after that we have nonetheless, and after that we have the following statement. So this is preceding information. Now, whatever we have information in this, it is not affected because of this. It does not get effect because of this. Just because it is a separate thing, though it is very difficult or something else which can contrast this thing. Now, whatever is expected of this situation is not seen in this situation. Now, nonetheless is similar to the meaning of nevertheless and however, and is typically used in more formal or academic writing. As I told you, that nevertheless, or the meaning of nevertheless, is just like that not only this part, but it can be something else as well. So this is how nevertheless plays. Similarly, we use the nonetheless conjunction. For example, the journey was extremely difficult. Now, this is the situation, this is the circumstances about the journey. Nonetheless, they reached their destination on time. Now, if we see this circumstance that the journey was extremely difficult, maybe it will definitely an obstacle in the place of journey, or maybe possible it will take a lot of time, maybe possible it will get someone to have more difficulties. Nonetheless, or you can say in spite of this or despite, it does not affect at all, they reached their destination on time. Nonetheless introduces the idea that despite the journey's difficulty, the successful outcome still occurred. It highlights a sense of persistence or resilience in the face of challenging circumstances. So this is how we use the word nonetheless. Usage of nonetheless. Nonetheless is used to connect two contrasting or contradictory ideas or situations, emphasizing that the second idea is true or happens despite the first one. It means the first one does not affect the second clause or whatever action we are going to do in the second clause. Now let us move to the next one. Structure of nonetheless. Nonetheless is an adverbial conjunction, and its structure in a sentence typically follows this pattern. Now, which pattern? First of all, we have independent clause. This is the first clause. Then after that, we have none clause, and then after that, we have another independent clause. Now, this independent clause creates a situation which can be difficult or which can be very easy. And this uh, independent clause, this will create some information, or this will be created by some information which contradicts this. Or you can say, whatever happens over here does not affect whatever happens here. So this is how we use the nonetheless structure. Nonetheless is used to connect two independent clauses which are complete sentence on their own. It serves to show contrast or contradiction between the two clauses. It means this is somewhere like coordinating conjunction. Now these are two independent clauses, but they are connected because of nonetheless, and they are showing contrast with each other. She was exhausted. This is one independent clause, one. Nonetheless, she stayed up late to finish her work. This is independent clause 2. So, she was exhausted means she was very tired, extremely tired. Yet, what she did her work. She finished her work. So this is one independent clause, this is another independent clause, and we are just adding a word nonetheless between these two clauses just to make it a sentence, to make it a complete sentence, and it is showing the contrast from one situation with another. The weather forecast predicted rain. This is one. Nonetheless, we decided to go on our camping trip. It means, yet we decided to do this thing despite having rain, or despite the prediction of rain. So here we can use the word nonetheless just as we use in spite of, despite, nevertheless, yet, only in those manners. So this is also showing the contradiction. Now let us move to the next one. Rules associated with nonetheless. Position in a sentence. First of all, nonetheless is typically placed immediately after the first clause or the idea that you want to contrast with the second clause or idea. Now, we usually don't begin the sentence using nonetheless. We place it in between, and after that we have a contradictory sentence, whereas the first one creates a situation which can affect the another situation. But it does not. It should not separate the contrasting elements. Nonetheless, she was tired. She decided to stay up late. Now here, nonetheless is used in a starting, which is incorrect. So this is incorrect, whereas the correct sentence will be, she was tired, then a semicolon, then nonetheless, she decided to stay up late. It means this is one sentence, these are two sentences creating only one with the help of nonetheless. So we are using semicolon and then comma in between. So this is how we use nonetheless in a sentence. This is the structure, how to write nonetheless in a sentence. Now let us move to the next one. Alternative synonyms. Now what can be other words for nonetheless? As I told you that whenever we use yet, despite, in spite of, nevertheless, all are contradictory conjunctions. So all the contradictory conjunctions can be the synonyms of nonetheless, and they can be placed in place of nonetheless. While nonetheless is a useful conjunction for showing contrast, there are alternative conjunctions as well, like however, nevertheless, but, still, yet, etc. Can also be used in similar contexts. The choice of conjunction depends on the specific tone and style you want to convey. Now, this is just up to you, whatever you want to use, whatever is there in your mind at the time of a speech or at the time of speaking, and whatever comes to your mind, you can write, or you can use any contradictory conjunction as per your requirement or as per your ability to speak them. Now let us move to the next one. Examples of nonetheless. Now let us have some examples of nonetheless. She had a busy schedule. Nonetheless, she managed to find time for her hobbies. In this sentence, nonetheless is used to contrast her busy schedule with her ability to make time for her hobbies. So this is how we are using nonetheless. Now, whatever is written in this sentence or in this clause, that she had a busy schedule. Now, from this clause, we must see, or we can analyze, that she does not get time for anything else. Yet, she takes time for her hobbies, or she makes time for her hobbies. So, this is how we can use nonetheless. Now, let us move to the next one. The restaurant was fully booked. Now, it means there was no room. Nonetheless, they found a way to accommodate our party. So, nonetheless, it means in spite of this situation as well. So, we are using nonetheless over here. Here, nonetheless contrasts the fact that the restaurant was fully booked with their ability to still find a way to accommodate the party. Now, let us move to the next one. The team was trailing by 10 points. Nonetheless, they staged a remarkable comeback and won the game. So, the team was trailing by 10 points. Nonetheless, it means yet they staged a remarkable comeback and won the game. Nonetheless highlights the contrast between being behind by 10 points and team's ability to come back and win. So this is how we can use nonetheless to show this contrast. He faced many challenges in his career. Nonetheless, he preserved and achieved great success. Despite the challenges, nonetheless emphasizes his determination and eventual success. The project was behind schedule. It means it was lagging in time. Nonetheless, they were able to meet the deadline through extra effort. Though they had less time, yet they finished it by the time or on time. So, here we can use nonetheless, contrast the project's delay with the extra effort to put in to meet the deadline. Now, let us move to the next one. She had limited experience in this field. Nonetheless, she was promoted to a leadership position. Maybe because of her work. Here, nonetheless, highlights the contrast between her limited experience and her promotion to a leadership role. The weather was unfavorable for outdoor activities. Nonetheless, they decided to go for a hike. Despite the unfavorable weather, nonetheless, shows their determination to go for a hike. The car had a few mechanical issues. Nonetheless, it got us to our destination without any problems. Nonetheless, emphasizes that despite the car's issues, it performed well on the journey. It performed well on the journey. Now let us move to the next one. She was tired. Nonetheless, she stayed up late to finish her work. So, though she was tired, yet she stayed up late to finish the work. The movie received mixed reviews. Nonetheless, it was a box office success. So this is how we can use nonetheless. Despite the rain, they went for a hike. Nonetheless, they had a great time. So here we are using the word despite and nonetheless together. However, they are not required to be used together. So we can say that this sentence is a superfluous as well. We should not write this type of sentence. Though informally we can write. He lost his job. Nonetheless, he remained optimistic about his future because he's an optimistic person. So, despite having left his job, he remained optimistic about his future. The car was old and unreliable. Nonetheless, it got us to our destination without any problems. She had limited resources. Nonetheless, she managed to complete the project ahead of schedule. So this is how we can use nonetheless in the sentences. Many people disagreed with these views. Nonetheless, he stood by his principles. The scientists had doubts, but nonetheless, they conducted the experiment as planned. Now, but is not required. We can use only nonetheless. The scientists had doubts. Nonetheless, they conducted the experiment as planned. Now we'll discuss on the contrary. So, till now we have discussed nonetheless. Here we are going to discuss on the contrary. Meaning of on the contrary. On the contrary is a conjunction. Now, contrary means showing the something which is showing the contradiction. In grammar, that is used to introduce a contrasting opposite statement or idea. So all these are contradictory statements. The usage of all these conjunctions are same. On the contrary means whatever has been said. On the contrary, or on the other hand, we have this situation. So that is the two situations are opposite to each other. So here we can use the phrase that is on the contrary. So It is just similar to nonetheless and other contradictory conjunctions. When on the contrary is used in a sentence, it signals that following information will run counter to, negate, or provide a different perspective from what has been mentioned before. So, two situations are there. So, what has been said over here will counter this one, or these two will contrast with each other, or just opposite with each other, opposite to each other, sorry. For example, she was not tired at all. On the contrary, she was full of energy and enthusiasm for the upcoming event. I thought he would fail the exam, but on the contrary, he scored highest in the class. So, on the contrary, it means I was not right, opposite to me or opposite to this situation, whatever is given over here. The something that happened was just opposite to it, of the expectation. Now let us move to the next one. Uses of on the contrary. On the contrary is used to introduce a contrasting idea, perspective, or information, challenging or negating what has been previously mentioned or assumed. It helps provide a more complete or balanced picture of a situation or argument. Structure of on the contrary. On the contrary is used to introduce a contrasting statement. Now, there are two situations. One which has been said, and another is contradictory, which is contrasting the previous statement. So, on the contrary is always used with that particular statement which shows the contradiction over another. That challenges or negates the previous statement, providing a different perspective or viewpoint. So, previous statement is written first. After that, we write on the contrary and then contrasting a statement. It means on the contrary will always appear in the middle of the sentence. Position in a sentence. On the contrary is typically placed after the statement or idea that it contradicts or opposes. It should immediately follow the previous statement to ensure clarity and effective contrast. Now let us move further. Now let us have some examples. On the contrary, they thought it would fail. It was a great success. Now this sentence is incorrect. Why so? Because it is written on the contrary, or it is beginning the sentence which is incorrect. And they thought it would fail. Now here in this sentence, we can see that they thought it would fail. It is not showing the contradiction. What is the contradiction? It was a great success. So this is the contradiction for this. They thought it would fail. On the contrary, it was a great success. Whatever they thought is the situation, and on the contrary is conjunction, and it was great success. This was the final outcome. Now let us move to the next one. Use with complete sentences. On the contrary is often used to introduce complete sentences or clauses. Each part of the sentence should be grammatically correct and convey a clear thought. She thought the task was impossible. So this is something which someone has thought. But on the contrary, now this is creating the contradiction. With determination and hard work, she accomplished it successfully. Though the task was difficult, yet she did it just because of her determination. So this is how we can use but on the contrary. Now let us move to the next one. Examples of on the contrary. Many people thought the new policy would lead to increased costs for consumers. On the contrary, it actually resulted in lower prices for the products. Now, in this sentence, we can see many people thought the new policy would lead to increased costs for consumers. So, this is something which many people had thought, or something which some people assumed. On the contrary, it actually resulted in lower prices. But whatever happened was something different for the products. They believed he lacked the necessary skills for the job. This is what they believed. On the contrary, his performance exceeded everyone's expectations. So this is how we show the opposite situation. Whatever we think, whatever is there in someone's mind, and whatever happens, they both are just opposite to each other. So that is why we use the phrase that is on the contrary. Now let us move to the next example. It was widely assumed that the team would lose the match. On the contrary, they won by a significant margin. Some argued that technology was isolating people. On the contrary, it has facilitated more connections and communication. So, this is how we can use on the contrary. Now, let us read another example. Some argued that technology was isolating people. On the contrary, it has facilitated more connections and communication. She thought the movie would be boring. On the contrary, it turned out to be one of the most exciting films she had ever seen. The cities predicted a flop for the new restaurant. On the contrary, it quickly became a local favorite, long waiting lines. So, this is how we can show on the contrary in the sentence, just opposing the previous statement. The company expected a decline in sales. On the contrary, their sales figures showed a steady increase. So here we can also see that in the two sentences or clauses, there have been two opposites always. For example, here it is a decline and here is an increase. It was assumed that project would take months to complete. On the contrary, it was finished ahead of schedule. It means before time. Now let us move to the next one. She said it was too difficult to learn a new language, but on the contrary, she became fluent in just a few months. He believed that working long hours was the key to success. On the contrary, she believed in maintaining a healthy work-life balance. This is how we can use on the contrary. Some people think that technology is making us more isolated. On the contrary, it has enabled us to connect with others around the world. Now, whenever we show the advantages and disadvantages of something, we can also use on the contrary in that part as well. It is often believed that artists struggle to make a living, but on the contrary, many artists are financially successful. So, this is how we are using on the contrary. They expected the event to be a disaster, but on the contrary, it was a huge success. So, both the statements showing opposite. In some cultures, women are expected to be passive, but on the contrary, many women are strong leaders. It was thought that a lack of funding was the reason for the project's failure, but on the contrary, it was poor planning that led to its downfall. So these were some sentences of on the contrary. So we have learned two connectors over here. First is nonetheless and then on the contrary. In our next session, we are going to discuss some more connectors. I hope you understood all these points. Thanks to you.